Sundays were for family. We gathered around Nana's table, sharing stories and laughter. This Sunday felt different. A heaviness hung in the air. My Aunt Sarah, usually bubbly, was unusually quiet. "What's wrong, Aunt Sarah?" I asked, concern filling my voice. She hesitated, then spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "It's about your grandfather. Your father's father, I mean." My ears perked up. I had never met my paternal grandfather. My father always changed the subject whenever he was mentioned. "What about him?" Aunt Sarah's eyes welled up. "There are things you deserve to know." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. My aunts and uncles exchanged nervous glances. My father, usually stoic, stared blankly at his plate. Aunt Sarah cleared her throat. "Your grandfather wasn't a bad man, despite what you may have heard." My head spun. Heard from whom? My father always avoided talking about him. The few times he did, it was with a bitter tone, referring to him as a stranger who abandoned his family. "He tried to contact your father many times," Aunt Sarah continued, her voice shaking. "But your grandmother, she kept them apart." My heart ached for my father. He sat there, shoulders slumped, a deep sadness etched on his face. The man who always seemed so strong, so unbreakable, looked suddenly vulnerable. Growing up, I knew my father had a difficult childhood. His father left when he was young, leaving him and his mother to fend for themselves. Or so we thought. Aunt Sarah's words painted a different picture. A picture of a man desperate to connect with his son, only to be shut out. A man erased from our family history. Later that evening, my curiosity got the best of me. Armed with my grandfather's name, I delved into the rabbit hole of social media. To my surprise, a profile popped up. It was him. Smiling back at me from the screen was a kind-faced man with twinkling eyes. Eyes so much like my father's. My heart pounded in my chest. This stranger was family. Scrolling through his posts, I stumbled upon something that made my breath catch in my throat. A photo of my father as a teenager holding a fishing rod, a proud smile on his face. The caption read, "My boy, so grown up already." Deeper into the profile, I discovered a treasure trove of messages. Heartfelt messages directed at my father, spanning years. Birthday wishes, holiday greetings. Words of encouragement during milestones I never knew he acknowledged. Each message was a punch to the gut, a stark reminder of the stolen relationship. He wrote about his life, his regrets, his longing to reconnect with his son and meet his grandchildren. One message, dated a few years back, stood out. "I know you may not see this, but I love you, son. Always have, always will." Tears streamed down my face as I read and reread his words. The messages weren't just for my father. There were messages for me too. He had stumbled upon my profile and recognized me as his granddaughter. He wrote about how proud he was of my accomplishments, how much he wished he could be a part of my life. One message in particular broke me. "If you ever see this, sweetheart, please know that your grandfather loves you. I may not have been there, but I think of you both every single day." The pain in his words was palpable. He wasn't a monster as he had been painted. He was a lonely old man, yearning for a family he was denied. The weight of this newfound knowledge pressed down on me. The happy memories of my childhood felt tainted, overshadowed by the injustice of it all. My grandmother, who I loved dearly, had single-handedly kept a father and son, a grandfather and his grandchildren, apart. Anger bubbled inside me. Anger towards my grandmother for her silence, for the pain she had inflicted on both sides. Anger towards my father for not digging deeper, for accepting the lies fed to him. But mostly, I felt an overwhelming sense of sadness. Sadness for the stolen moments, the missed opportunities. Sadness for the love that was never allowed to bloom. Confronting my parents about my discovery was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The conversation was strained, filled with tears and accusations. My father, usually so composed, broke down, revealing a lifetime of pain and resentment he had kept bottled up. It was then that I realized forgiveness was the only way forward. Forgiving my grandmother for her choices, however misguided they were. Forgiving my father for his silence, for carrying the burden of the past for so long. Discovering my grandfather's existence has irrevocably changed me. It has opened my eyes to the complexities of family, the secrets we keep, and the long-lasting impact of our choices. While I mourn the lost years, I am also grateful for the truth. My grandfather may be gone, but his memory lives on. In the heartfelt messages he left behind, in the stories I've gathered from relatives, in the features I see reflected in my own father's face. I will never know the reasons behind my grandmother's actions, but I refuse to let her silence define our family's future. I am determined to break the cycle of secrecy, to build bridges of understanding and forgiveness. My grandfather may not have been physically present in our lives, but his story is now interwoven with ours. And in sharing his story, I hope to honor his memory and ensure that he is never forgotten.